available in the API for 8K. And number 3 is just sending around questions, talking to developers there. And if you have any specific questions to ask about your Android project or any kind of API, there's a couple of guys over here to help you out. Alright?
And one more thing.
Yeah.
I actually don't have any, but
you can lie down, you can sleep.
Yes.
Just begin overnight lah.
Yes.
So I'm gonna hand it over to Bonnie and thanks, Arthur. So hi, I'm assuming everyone are developers.
No, I'm an user.
kind of. I'm a dabbler.
First, an introduction. I'm Bonnie, one of gang of code Android Malaysia. So I'm going to talk to all of you about the Nexus 7 and the Galaxy Nexus, and I think probably the Nexus device in general. So in case you haven't seen it, this is the Nexus 7. This is Naruto. So it's a 7-inch device, 1280-800 resolution screen, Tegra 3 quad-core, so it's very, very nice for gaming. I don't know whether you can do, probably not, but I'll show you later on this thing. So it's running Android Jelly Bean. Have you all heard about Jelly Bean? So
it's sweet.
So Jelly Bean is the latest Android device, latest Android operating system. It improves upon iTrain sandwich by focusing on performance. So basically, the rendering has got much more smoother. So we're basically almost iOS smooth right now. So many stuff. So there are a few APIs coming out that if you are a developer, you'll probably be interested in the new notifications. There has expanded notifications. I think there's also some new NFT APIs where you can do file transfer, Bluetooth pairing. Basically, they've made it standard so that you can pair stuff using Bluetooth and NFT. What else is new? Can anyone tell me what else is new?
Recyclable widgets.
Yep, recyclable and also not recyclable widgets. I think widgets that can move icons around and
it's more adaptive than before.
It behaves like iOS right now. If you drag it to a launcher where there's not enough space to resize, it will move your icon. So what else is new?
Google Now.
Google Now, right? So
Voice recognition.
Google Now.
Google Now is an assistant. It's an assistant. It uses the Google Knowledge Graph. It tries to predict what you want to do, what you're interested in, and tell you your search before you search for them. For example, if you search for an airplane for a flight, before your flight is due, it will actually notify you, you're supposed to get from here to the airport, give you an estimation based on the traffic and all that. But it's not very accurate. For me, it feels like no. So other than that, there's also this voice. Let's do something like this. Who is the Prime Minister of Malaysia?
What's now?
You need it. Let's do something. I had it on.
I think it was it.
I know it's searchable. No, it was. Where is the Prime Minister of Malaysia?
Click on that.
Najib Khan Raja.
Well, the real Prime Minister is the real Prime Minister.
Try this. Yeah, but I'll spoil it.
What is
It's slightly smarter. You can do questions that are not so direct. For example, do I need an umbrella today? So you ask for it the weather, I asked it whether I needed an umbrella, it will tell me. I didn't pay to that's why you need to go now. So I guess that if this is the interface for Google now, there will be cuts, the swipe cuts away, there will be more cuts if you search for more things to follow. I think they're going to make this an open API in the future, but probably not in reality. So there's also the new Play Store, you can do magazines, you can do music, new movies, blah blah blah, etc. So who has a Nexus device here? Nexus. So have you used your phone? Yes? Yeah. So why do you use your phone? Why do you use your phone? Right, because you can. Yeah, because you can. That's a good thing. So basically, sometimes you wonder why Nexus phone, why not a PC, Samsung, or some other phone. So the reason being, Nexus phone, if you want to unlock the bootloader is very easy. It's basically a command that you run and then you unlock the bootloader. So what is your bootloader? Your bootloader is like imagine you buy a PC and then your PC manufacturer tells you cannot install anything but Windows on this PC. Will you buy it? Yes. For example, the Chromebox can only run Chrome OS. Will you buy it instead? Yeah, so I think we have to So we're used to this open concept in the PC world, but for phones, we are still sort of tied down to the manufacturer OS, except if you're using a Galaxy Nexus. The Galaxy or the Nexus devices allows you to unlock your bootloader, which means you can install your own stuff in it. So because you can set your own OS and all that, you can easily write your own operating system. If you don't like how Android behaves or you want to put in your own awesome feature A, you can do it. So other manufacturers, they don't allow you to do all this. So if you're a developer and you feel like entering at the framework level, you want to see how things are being done, you want to change code, you want to install it on your phone, right? Use the Nexus device. So there's a tablet, Nexus 7, that's Galaxy Nexus, that's Nexus app. So I think basically that's why as a developer you should try to go for Nexus devices. It opens up a lot of opportunities. You can like what you said, trying to build your phone is one experience, trying to compile your own Android device, your own Android OS, that's another experience. Try to change this and then flash it, that's another experience. So if you buy a regular phone, you're basically stuck. You can't explore all this. You're basically using the Android device as an end user. If you're an end user, then that's fine, but you're a developer. So always try to get a Nexus device. Also, if let's say you're really not interested in all of this, you just want to use it as an end user, there's also a reason for you to get a Nexus device. That's basically because there's a lot of developer support, right? Even when your manufacturer has decided that this device has end of life, Samsung declared that the Galaxy, the original Galaxy is not going to get dented. But there will be developers that can get access to the source code, you build it, and you get to flash it. So basically, you get a lot of frequent OS updates following. So I guess that's it. Okay? Right, I forgot about it. Sorry, that's sort of like the master now. It's not available in Malaysia. The Nexus Q is basically a media streamer. It's not a media streamer, it's a cloud media streamer. What it does is that it saves music. So, like what you did, Mike has just pushed his song and then take it through the Nexus Q. So what happens is that the Nexus Q is actually fed as a device. it knows the playlist that we are queuing up right now. When you hit play, the Nexus queue actually pulls from the graph. It's not pushing from the device, so it doesn't actually, you don't turn off your device after you push your queue. So what it does is that if you're like here and everyone has Nexus Q, the Nexus Q app, and everyone has Google Music installed, which I don't think anyone has. You have to have your Google Music account and all that. You can actually push your songs to the queue, and then it stays in it. It also plays YouTube videos.
Okay, that's the end. Sorry, they listed like in a single file, I cannot play, and you cannot stream the stuff here without VPN or whatever. So your videos, movies.
I think for Google Music, you need to register and upload your songs once to Google Music.
But Google Music is pretty open public. Music you can allow for generation and you can upload all your music downloads to this place.
There's an app for them to do that.
I don't know whether you can get. I don't know whether you can get access to the store.
You can.
No, you can get it for
Just so you can buy it.
you can just buy it.
But if you the free songs that they give out, you can have access to that.
No, I think you need to upload one, then you get access to all the
music.
Yeah. But without that, you just see the regular Google Music and you play off your device.
It's not happening.
So it's still a bit limited in terms of end user experience, but it's a Nexus device. So it means that you can unlock it, you can do whatever you want with it as a USB port, and then it was announced at Google I/O that it's for hacking. It's not for charging, it's not for transferring data. You can do ADB and all that, you can connect to it, you can launch devices, you can launch apps.
There's a hack that is form
Yeah.
for you to use
The not this
the not to control the form.
Just like you have the YouTube videos, right? You can off the web or the YouTube application. You take the option. Yeah, if YouTube application that streams off the web means you are not pushing from device to the queue, it goes online.
So the next 7 shouldn't have any restriction of movement like bringing in from US.
No, you can use everything except accessing probably the magazine, the books, the songs, and the movies. Now, except for the movies, you can use VPN. Once you use VPN, you can get access to all the content. Except movies, you still can't play even with the VPN. Because all of us got the Transformers movie, we can try playing it.
Yeah, even if you go to YouTube now, previously you could, so we use the VPN to watch YouTube movies and all, but recently they don't want to associate with VPN, they stopped it all.
I think all the while they have the capability.
Yeah, the Asia language has been starting it out.
Is it because of the identifying the
They know the VPN host and they can.
It's the right thing.
But you gotta keep rotating.
Feel free to come
All right.
Signing up. Well, of course, it's this alarm clock. So, if you click the alarm clock, it's smoking, right? Alarm clock, you have to be on me. So, this alarm clock, right? So, let's say you open it and see that. So, you can development board. So, you can see that this one actually can unplug, right? It's exactly the same, form factor as the ordinary Arduino that actually you know what it is. It's the open source single board microcontroller that actually is kind of for beginner or something like. It's supposed to be easy to program the microcontroller. So of course, if you later see, you can open the IDE to let you see that. So what we are trying to show, what is this thing? This thing is officially alarm clock. So let's open the alarm clock. So now I set it to the time. So this first button is to set the time. How to set the time? All these are capacity buttons, so you can slow a bit, so you slow down a bit. All the button is inside. So okay, now is no. Slow down. So you slow down. That's okay. Then the next one is, this is to set the alarm. I set it to 1 o'clock, so later we see how it's actually not so high the volume because the speaker is just this one. And then it can plug into other speakers. But these other are just for this is to set the brightness of this LED. So the way you set is this part, which is the capacity measure. Then you no. Right, you're more angry than me. Of course, I once again have to thank someone that actually asked me to go to certain session that is solution. Because this is not a now session. I mean, it's not like it's inside the I/O at previous day and we don't know it. So it's actually only like put up on the poster on the day itself. And I said the reason to reduce people to get this thing. It will be all people. Yes. How much are you selling? This one is the volume, so it's now outside. This is the display. This is the one we can play around. I initially wanted to forget something to say welcome to KL Mini. This is the part that is quite easy to do because the way to control this LED are just single line. You can ask them to send C, send O, send D, send E. But then you cannot speak code Android Malaysia, right? So I need to have this eliminate. So that one takes some time and easy to do. This is the preset, which actually you can set what you want to, what volume, what brightness, what color, and also this is the setting. And finally, this is to lock the screen. So I unlock it. Of course, nothing I'm gonna just push. Sorry, and it's locked. It's really locked. So let's consider it now. Consider which one? The locking. So you got ready, you cannot switch out the phone. Very tough. So how do you interpret the address of this? Oh, wait. That's sorry. Of course, there is a companion app that actually talks to this. Why? Because this is not only an alarm clock. Even though they say this is an alarm clock. But remember you connect it first. So to connect it, there are two ways to connect from Android phone to the new one, what we call SDK 2.0 board. Previously, you can only go through the USB connection, where this becomes the USB host. This is your USB client, the client side, and then you connect this you give the power and so on. Now they add Bluetooth. So I'm showing you the way that actually Bluetooth. So to connect it to Bluetooth, right? That one. This one is the so you can project screen. This one is conditional. We delete it. I think I'm still not in the time. Some don't say they are after the number of which one of them? Don't know. So this one, you need to connect to the Bluetooth. So I already on the Bluetooth. So you need to pair you need to show you don't pair inside the app, you pair outside of that. Later you also can download the app in the car. It's not restricted to your app. So the app is this one, this mobile, the education bookshop, which is yeah, my wife is so what do you wear this to? A lot of people don't know what it is. So it's like some triangles. Let's play. A, play, A. Right, let's say this Bluetooth. And then you say this one side, this one side. And all the time. But now, it's really very more.
Oh, I think it can. I think it can.
When it's locked, we can't use connect. And now you have, therefore, now you look at
Switch off and switch on again.
Oh, you do that? Okay. I mean,
I saw the access now.
because I will place the phone. Okay, so I just have to reset that because I connected before I got this. So when you click to this display mode, right, now you are able to control what you want to show here. I think I put the temperature of this room. You can just set it to show temperature, which is 29.5 degrees Celsius. Of course, the one to see right at the center is just all over the placement. So there are temperature sensors, thermometer. There, both. I'm getting temperature control. So, there are other things you can see as well. It's something like humidity. Humidity.
Pressure. And can you just press it?
It's not a bit the computer. Oh. I only put a bit after I update 5 years. It starts to don't respond to my touch. I'm not sorry to. But I use it because that's the one I can use.
But only one got trapped in the background.
Yes,
There's color sensors.
no, that's not.
Yeah,
You're going to set the color around you. There's lots of blue.
So you can. Hey, my computer has something.
Yeah, it's like blue.
So you can use the color cut to do something. Okay, that's it.
Alright, so good.
Okay. Okay, let's say I want to set the color. So I will capture. Got any no color. Take off the shirt.
The robot.
Yeah, it's red color.
But you haven't distinguished color. Where's the sensor? It's up here. Yeah, that's it. We have to do red capture.
Press the second button.
This is changing the color of the direction of the. But this one is capture. When
The red button.
the color.
Yeah, the red button.
No, you will change inside here, then the color is very capture. Then you change the color of the LED. But it doesn't say that you know what's going on. Okay, that's why you need to. I don't understand now. What is it? What sensor is that? But I suspect it's a color of the one pixel.
It's still a camera.
One pixel. But I'm not correcting that.
Oh, it's not fair.
It's Bluetooth connection. First one. They add audio. So now you can do USB audio or Bluetooth audio. So Bluetooth audio they go up to S2DC, but the old one also they support. USB audio is a new one and there's one single page to talk about that. And then they also add HID device. So you can create your own input, mouse, keyboard or gamepad. Because that's the accessory people want. Previously, you get the Arduino and Mega edition, you don't know what to do also because not much of accessory you can think of. Also now the add all these, so you can think of to build your keyboard and this controller. Of course, this probably target the phone that is done with the phones. I think they also probably cater for the new accessibility, the braille.
Yeah, that's how. But those are, if you have USB ports, right, it's really built-in support. So that's why I also, you want to see how good is the USB port support, I got a wireless laptop.
But
My controller, you can play game also.
yeah, this actually is a big device for the class. Big use case where you don't really want to have a big device. Yeah, true also lah, because cable is very problem getting around.
Oh, that's why the Bluetooth, the Bluetooth, right, it doesn't look complicated if you check the programming lah. It's still the same like you need your ID, you connect, you open the socket. Any questions that I'm trying to?
It's still programming by the USB, eh?
You still have to program USB. If you program like this one before, it's just that when you select both out, right, there's only one, and you say to the cell. But actually, it's still the usual design if you do it from Linux USB one. So if you can start to try to download this app, the easiest way to download this app is you have an NSA, so you just come here and tap. That's here. No, it's an technique for you to download the education version of that. No, it's a text. So you come here, you just up install it. The rest, this is the display. So the most of the sensor are here, the capacity, the slider is here, and then you're supposed to be able to put the top. But it's so tight, you cannot. I scare, so you know, stay there for some time. Before we can buy coin from Barcamp or I don't know store, which I suspect very soon.
So the programming right, what's the thing, the last of the key, programming right.
Everything the API one is actually the same.
Oh, okay, so the API is the same.
The Bluetooth one is slightly different stuff. But up to the point that you start to read by and write, right? That's the thing.
Okay, yeah.
It's the for your own side, what we call the set you say read by, what to do. But once you say you want to program for the audio and the ID, right? You have to read. Those are different.
So they got extra stuff.
Because the previous one, like the one we talked about, previous IDK 1 also, that you need permission. So that the request for permission, that's so that you can read your sensor data, or you can control a servo to move the robot. But the text ID and the audio, you don't need permission.
Okay.
It's like you plug in the keyboard, you don't need permission. That's slightly different.
Oh, that's also API for audio.
Yeah, that's the one. That don't give example, so I don't know how to start the keyboard and the mouse. So maybe I can ask for you to help me with that.
No, because I just don't learn the SQ. This is all I want to thank you.
No, I can just. So I think that's all I got. That's
Things on the
PHP moving on to Python.
It doesn't matter whether compute on sorry, compute or not, but the idea is to show what we have learned from the process itself. So we have three speakers. I'm going to start after I finish our talk. So
Sorry. I'm showing you on the internet.
alright, hello.
Hey, thanks, Sumang, and hello, in Malaysia. So, I think the theme, like Sumang said, was talk about some projects we did in this July config.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the spirit of that, when Sumang mentioned it, I said, well, I do kind of have a project that I suppose I can show, so I got it ready enough that it's demoable to you guys. I hope it's like interesting enough. Maybe it will introduce you to a few new things about Python, or just a few ideas. So what I'm going to do first is I'll just demo it, and I think that I'll probably be able to ask you guys to also give it a shot. Never, oops, never really done anything like this before with
Oh
this.
no!
Yeah, he's just gonna sleep. He's just like.
Oh, excellent. Oh no! Okay, let me help to control your slide.
Okay.
I've got to plug in and start recording.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Grab. Okay, that's it. Yeah. That's video.
Okay, yeah.
It was by, I don't know if you guys know Cheng Soon, Bear with Laws.
Yeah.
It's actually his like baby in a sense. So the idea being there'd be some way to, we would publish like a slug for the event at the event itself. I've created an event and given it slug Pi My July. So I've written it up there. So if I enter here, then it allows me to check in, which I will do, which you can all try to do if you want. If you have a laptop or...
Okay. Password is 1, 2, 3, 4.
Password is asterisk, 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 asterisk.
Oh, oh.
7 asterisks, 7 digit. Try again.
And then this is the main dashboard for the event. Is anybody else trying to check in?
Wait. On it, on it, on it.
There's somebody else there.
Mobile friendly.
So while you're doing this, I really must say this is just like a little bit of a prototype, something that we did on and off in our spare time. It's not really hardened or tested or that polished, and the features are really minimal. It's really just like a hyped up like chat system at the moment, I guess. Somebody managed to go online, like part of the web app or just built with Django. So almost everything you see is Django. But like we mentioned, we use like Socket.io, like WebSocket layer. So to be able to provide that, we use like Tornado, and then there's a package called Tornado.io. So we started working on this about the actual first event was about a year ago, like I said, and the code was like quite stale for a while and only worked on quite sporadically. So at that time, Tornado and Tornado.io was about the only way you could do WebSockets with Python. I think Slimang showed me this morning that since then you can do WebSockets with a range of web servers. Like you were showing me Bottle just now, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you want to how to use WebSocket.
And then this is
Okay, before. Okay, you guys know what is Django?
pictures and all, then you scan it.
Okay, normally.
So like Django cannot do like event-based like it can't support like a event-based web server. So you can't do Socket.io with this with Django, but it supports the PSGI interface. I guess some of you are aware of what PSGI like interface is.
PSGI.
Am I saying the right thing?
The BSGI.
Sorry, because in parallel it's called PSGI. Confused between the two. Yeah. So you can wrap your Django app up inside your Tornado web server, and you can route certain URLs to your Django app, and you can route others to your Socket.io component farm. So that's how we do that. So on the top level, our app is a Tornado app, and it has within it a Django app. That's all I have to say about it.
So for those that don't know, Django is one of those big web framework in Python. Tornado is one of the web server, Internet web server. So it's previously written by some guys in Google, which in turn start friend feed, then go to join Facebook now. So it's like it's known to be very high performance web server, which you can do like live update It's
Yeah,
just not.
like it says, it's like a non-blocking web server, so it's quite,
Yeah.
you can quite easily do event-based like programming with it and stuff. Okay. So I'll just move on to GitHub and show you the code. And so we like host the, I mean, given that it's just like a little sort of like experimental project, we host, we like make the code publicly available. We don't hide it away. This is not my repository either. This is like, where was the closest one? That's where we host it.
Oh, is there event?
Yeah, there is.
So I did plan to show you this on the command line and that. So so the kind of like, this is where everything starts. This is the server script. This is what you run to start the server. The most like relevant part is that essentially this is a wrap around this class called camper that does everything. And so camper is really like it's a package. It contains a class that inherits from Tornado.io socket connection. So this is where you write all your like handlers on the server side. And then the actual camper class itself really just sets up Tornado settings. I think it starts the event loop. Yeah, it has a method that starts the event loop. I go at all because it's quite standard kind of stuff. That, or maybe you would like to see that.
Why not?
Okay.
They have to a long time just even before the video.
Yeah. But before I look at the Django stuff, I'll just have a look at the JavaScript in front of the client-side JavaScript. So one thing to note is that when we started building this, then the module package called the Tornado.io package was using Socket.io version 0.6. I know that doesn't mean anything to anybody, but like the kind of state of the art at the moment is like 0.7, which has quite a different like interface. The way that you use sockets on the front end is quite different. I don't know if any of you work with like Socket.io, but you tend to create a socket, then you use the emit method to emit messages, and you have like different message names. This like interface doesn't support that at all. All you can really do with the socket is send some data. So so if you're familiar with like Socket.io and you look at this and say, what's going on? That doesn't look right. That's why I'll probably try to upgrade that quite soon. That's going to be high on my priority list. So yeah, on the JavaScript side, we create a new socket and define some events using jQuery. When certain events are triggered, we will use the socket to send data to the server, and vice versa. I believe there should be this will send, and there should be somewhere else that will listen for here. So this is what listens to things coming in from the server on the socket. So on connect, I think we will tell the server that we have checked in, and then the server will then broadcast that to everybody else. And that's why when you log in, if like somebody comes up on the screen. Okay, please stop me if you have any questions.
Well, if you're too shy, I don't mind you can go find you after this.
What's that?
I hope you don't mind that we find you after this.
No, that's fine. Yeah. And so by the way, like honestly, I'm by no means like a Python expert at all. I don't use it day to day in my day job. I quite like it as a language, so I try to play with it in my kind of limited spare time. So if you see anything in the code here that seems like weird, then it probably is weird. Feel free to like point that out to me and tell me how I can do things better. I'm just really here to learn and stuff. There's even like some basic things about Python that you might think everybody would know that I might not know. So the Django stuff. So we're in front end. So we call the Django app front end. Um, what is there to show you? Our local settings is not posted on GitHub, so it's at least one security measure that we do. For this is just like a basic testing app. So we just use SQLite as the database. It's easy to use, and it's relational, so it just slots into Django nicely. Um, so sorry, no SQL on this one. It's not really necessary for us on this at this scale. Django like does its own like ORM stuff, and it has like a manager that can help you with that a lot. So it's not really an issue.
So you use social auth here?
Yeah.
So,
So yeah. So you saw you all like checked in using Twitter. So to do that check-in, we use social auth, and I believe social auth like handles like can do that with a range of like service providers, not only Twitter. And then we use a package called Tweepy, I think, to actually query the Twitter API. Because we use social auth to check you in, but once we want to show your like Twitter what's it, profile image, we use Tweepy to hit their API to get that back. What's that?
The Django social auth API doesn't handle photo?
I believe it doesn't.
Okay.
It was a while since I coded that, but I think I had trouble with it. That's why I had to use Tweepy.
Okay.
So I think maybe at this point I might give a quick overview of some problems that we had during development, because I guess they're quite interesting. When we first began, we couldn't really figure out a way to have like the Django app, to have a Tornado server, and have the two of them like communicate with each other. We were a bit naive, and we didn't really understand how, like, we couldn't figure out a simple way to do that. So we thought that we would try to use like a messaging queue in between the two. I think that we were just a little bit, we just wanted to play with things. So we were like, let's put RabbitMQ in the middle and they can talk to each other, and when we get really big, then we'll already have the kind of architecture in place. So we did that, and it worked okay actually, but then we decided that we would try to deploy on Heroku. We're like basically masochists, I think.
Yeah.
So we managed to get Heroku to give us like a RabbitMQ like instance to be able to use, plus the standard sort of like toasting thing. But it just didn't work at all. I mean, we deployed and we tried to use it, and it just like everything should have been working, but it just didn't work. And then I spoke to their support staff. I went back and forth with them a bit, and I eventually wrote a kind of like I guess like a bug report script that showed why it didn't work, and I sent it to them, and their response was kind of like, yeah, I guess it doesn't work, and then that was it. So then we had to like forget that. So then I thought, well, I thought, forget trying to host on something like Heroku. It's like more trouble than it's worth. I will just use like an Amazon micro instance. But by that time, I also decided that RabbitMQ was just overly complex and not necessary. I thought it might as well just work out how to use Tornado to talk our big problem was like Tornado needs to update the Django, the database for using Django like models. And it turned out that to actually do that was really quite easy. So this might not be best practices, but basically within our Tornado app, we use like the Django models, which are these. Import them here. All that this needs is that this environment variable Django settings module is set, and then you can pretty much use your Django models outside of the whole Django thing. So I mean, it seems like that's not what you're supposed to do. Like whenever I've worked with other frameworks or other languages, then that's quite a common thing that you can do.
Yeah.
The models layer is not really part of the framework, so it seemed natural to me.
Yeah. Can you go down a bit, maybe?
Yeah.
That looks good. The motor is pretty simple as well.
Yeah, really quite simple. And to kind of tie users together with events, we have like a check-in concept, which is really just like a. So I think I can show you that. So I'm going to go to the admin section, which is.
Oh yeah, by the way, Django actually had a built-in admin server, FYI. Just so in case for Python newbie. Yes.
So you've probably seen this before, Django admin backend. It's a simple plugin you can turn on in Django, and then you can edit all of your your backend stuff through a web interface. So we've got events, Pi, Mai, July, which I created for you guys. We've got users, probably quite a few, I guess, all of you.
I hope we don't store our password.
Because you used a lot, so we cannot.
Yeah.
It's stored the token.
Revoke it. Revoke it. Revoke it.
Fake logo.
Oh.
Hey, I should do that, huh?
Here's all your messages. So like I actually deleted the database and recreated it just before I came. So this is everything you see here is what you guys put. I'm gonna go over it one by one when I go home and figure out what you guys are really about.
Select all.
Hacker's Paradise.
No,
That's script.
on Django, the model,
It's wrapped.
yeah, it's wrapped pretty well. It's a bit hard for you to consume.
And then so a check-in maps a user to an event. And okay, so I think that covers most of it, to be honest.
All right.
Like I said, this really is just like a little playground. I mean, the reasons I work on this now and again is it's not to try to like develop the next like startup that I want to go into. Like that's purely from a personal point of view. It's more like it's just something that I can hack on and try to learn about Python, learn about like WebSocket development, like real-time web app development. It's good fun once you have a few hours spare and just try things. So I learned a lot through it, and it's barely anything at all. So okay, so I think I'm done. So if you have any further questions, no.
Alright, guys, any question?
Well, come and find me if you do.
Yeah, if you guys are shy, you can talk to me directly.
Yeah.
Finish recognition, the whole thing will be done. The texture.
Nice.
You look for this. You can be patches in the line.
You can like scan in this.
It sucks. It's very suck. Okay. All right. Welcome aboard. Introducing Carrier. I work with him for a few projects. Signal project is one of them. And
This chair is a bit. Is it pronounced as
All the chairs have made this noise.
but they call it Carrier.
Sounds Japanese.
Well, this is a very interesting story, Richard. You want to put it here?
All right. I actually have done nothing. Well, I have two, so to make up for it, I have two topics today. One is related to schema, which is using dexterity, which is basically, what, I don't know how to describe it, lightweight content types. Boring stuff, but to do stuff really quickly. Then the other one is pandas, which is the Python way of working with R-like language.
Mm.
So I have I got distracted on pandas
Yeah.
because of my NP. So I'll start with dexterity, which is a bit more boring. It's nothing exciting, but it's things that get stuff done. Okay. So this is boring, but just going to explain a little bit on this. Basically, one of the things that we wanted to do for the SINA project was to be able to tie in several sources of data and mix it together, mostly for people of interest. So for each specific person of interest, let's just say a politician, we might have data sources from 5 or 6 different places, and we want to be able to tie in the data from all the different places together to this one person. So the initial idea was to have an API which anybody can call and says, I want to have this name, and from this name I want to get all his assets, or I want to know all his stance on issues. I want to know where he's worked for, what his education is, and so on. So this is an example of worse is better. So we had a YC who was working on a Ruby on Rails app to do the API things and so on. And what happened was that the problem that we ended up with is that we've got an API, we've got a UID, but we have no data. So there's nowhere to get all these data, like on basic, for example, basic education of the politicians. We don't know what they graduated in. We don't know what they worked in. We don't know, really, right now we're only at 20%. So out of 222 entries, we don't even know their educational background and what they used to work in. That's how bad the situation is. So we've got a brilliant API with no data. So that's the reason why I didn't do my Pandas talk, because we were scrambling about a week ago, and says we've got to figure a way of getting all this data, maybe through crowdsourcing. Maybe that's probably the best way we can get the data. Nothing fancy, nothing programmatic, just 100 volunteers Googling around and trying to get the data in as quickly as possible. So I had to basically write something up in about 4 hours and to have a wiki and a structured like data. So initially we tried to do it with ROR, but a framework is not the right tool to get a wiki-like thing to manage 100 people in 4 hours, whatever hours that we have. So basically, I had to write something like this 4 hours, something that manages 100 volunteers, to be able to quickly have a wiki-like format for each of our NPs, complete with history, full text search, and all of this in about 4 hours. So the right tool is actually a CMS. And one of the things that we learned was that we wanted to have it like a wiki, like a media wiki. That works, except the problem with media wiki is that it's for a free-for-all. There's some markdown markup, but you can't have structured text, structured information that you can pull out data from our API. So we need a half wiki, half CMS kind of combo. So what I needed to do was very quickly, in a flexible way, create a form with full text search, structure so that I can index it later for our database. It had to have versioning so that every time somebody edits, it had to be tracked. It had to be tagged. And then I had to have the whole UI with listing, alphabetical order, latest updates, who your MPs are, and so on. So yeah, so basically I had to have something like this with all these fields.
That was the face.
Who's this guy? He invented it. And
Good serving.
Like, can you unlike it?
Can you undislike?
You can, you mean
Can you?
unlike? There's
So you have. So oh, okay. So there's okay.
I don't think you've learned yet, and I think it's a bit slow to understand.
So you can like and dislike at the
You
same
can,
time.
yeah, you can dislike it.
But this is actually meant for us to actually the information is complete incomplete.
It's a flag of the information, not the MP.
Oh, okay. But when people see it, the first impression is about the MP. But this is more of voter education. Okay. It's not for you. It's not a fan club type of thing. 100%.
You're right.
You do a pre-election voting process over here.
Online.
The polls.
Actually,
The public
somebody,
poll.
that was the reason for the like. Again, the like and unlike, they wanted to have who are the most popular ones. So I've implemented that as well very quickly. Um, Actually, I didn't implement it. It just registered something, which I'll show you shortly. So basically, we have something like this. I need all the fields. Um, can blame DG for the speed.
Oh, why don't you use
I use the Wi-Fi.
why don't you use the Wi-Fi?
So friendly.
Oh, it's already loading up, I guess.
Not that bad.
So basically, I had to do this form, something like this, with rich text, fields, calendar, pretty boring stuff. And then it has to be iteratively improved in the sense that each one of these fields later on would have to be, for example, a data grid and so on. So it just had to go really quickly. Um, Pictures and so on, even consistency. So better is worse. I have a free text field, so at worst just put in P150 Singai below whatever it is. Once after that, we'll just use some regular expressions to automatically get it up into a proper structured format later. So yes, it'll be cool. I think I was working on an autocomplete, but if there's no autocomplete, worse is better. As long as there's the information data, it's better than nothing. So that was one of the things of doing this. So you can see this is pretty boring. You can do this in anything. But one of the advantages of this is that you'll realize that I have pretty much everything else, including automatic tagging. And, and everything else, including
Nika code.
you can tag that as well. It's slow. So basically, if I have a schema, so I need something that's extendable. So everybody in every framework you can quickly create forms. But what I need now is that if I create this form, how do I make each one of those fields text searchable immediately? How do I make it so that each one of them is extended to have the like and dislike buttons? How do I make sure that each one of them has a history? So that each field has track changes. So there you go. So every single edit, for example, has to be able to have a track change. Now, if we had to do this in a framework, that's going to be a lot of work. It's a lot of. It's not difficult. I think a lot of you guys have implemented it, workflows and so on, but it's a lot of work. Similarly, each one of these there's 100 volunteers. I need to have the ability for each assigned who can edit, read, and so on. So CMS is perfect for that. Usually people tend to suggest MediaWiki, but MediaWiki is just too unstructured. You can't lock, for example, if somebody spams, or if we don't know who some of the volunteers are. So we can easily search, manage each one of these. Yeah, our BDSM phones here. PSTM, yeah. Okay, so anyways, this is not interesting, but and then again, I have to do latest, tag, and so on, just out of 4 hours of work. So So the CMS actually does most of this. So let me just flip over to the code.
So all this is constructed in Plone.
In Clone, but on a lightweight, how to describe it? Clone is the structure that provides all these things. That's not interesting in the sense that all the features is available in a lot of CMSs. What's interesting is actually getting that form and getting all those features done in about 15 lines of code, 20 lines of code. So this is the part. Um,
Okay.
those familiar with component development are probably familiar with this. Well, you have an object that says, I implement these interfaces. And then you hook up these interfaces that this object implements. So this object implements history, and you immediately get versioning for it. This object implements rich text, and you immediately get rich text out. So one of the things that Clone is built on is the Zope component model. So all these things are already there, and I'm just hooking it up to each field with minimal amount of work. So this is where it gets fun.
This is the dong part where item looks like Java.
No.
Interfaces, component.
Concept wise.
It does not look
Yeah.
like Java. In concept, yes, but it's still Python, which means it's 15 lines of code, not 150. But
I do this in Java in 15 lines, like, no.
so let me share the code. Let me just switch.
Impossible.
Impossible.
Unless
Migrating Scala. Oh wait, this not Java.
yeah, that's a different thing that we understand.
So basically, it's just a few lines. This is bad. Should I change the speed?
Yeah, it's a bit hard to see on the photo side. The TV is fine though. Does here. It's
Yeah, the TV is really bright.
I'll say color scheme in green. So is that okay?
I think evening might work nicer.
Yeah, maybe you can like turn off some of the lights. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still dark, but
maybe you should. Oh, is there a
Then
button for
you can
this?
see the font.
Now it's okay.
Yeah, I'll just make it a little bit bigger.
yeah. Okay.
So basically, we've got a few imports, which is the fields, and basically the whole. As you can see it here. Okay. So basically, what you've got is once you've got the fields, it's got the form itself is just a schema of interfaces. So each schema, so each schema is an interface, and then once I've got this interface, all I've got to do after that is just add or remove fields and say what this field implements or what this class implements. So that's basically as simple as it is as I can get. I just put a title. If I need it to be text searchable, I import a full text component, and I say, okay, directive for this field is full text search. And that thing does it all automatically. Whether it's rich text or lists or so on, somebody's already done it. And that's basically it. So just go through. And then if I need a widget, for example, all I need to do is a directive for this widget. So let's just say this is education. Maybe that's not a good one.
How about the searchable stuff
Yeah,
there?
they're all searchable.
No, I mean as in autocomplete.
Okay, so let's just say this is an autocomplete. So this is a text line. This one's not good. But I'm just going to show it as an example. So let's just say this is a text line and it's a website. So now let's just say there's common websites for it. So I'll do something like form widget text autocomplete.
Waited. Yours takes time. Just kidding.
Yeah.
You get a lot of crap.
I did not say anything. I did not say
He's not the one writing the articles, that's true.
anything. Sorry.
So something like this, and then you get a source. Source is any Python, RDBMS, or whatever it is, and it'll automatically have all the JavaScript in jQuery UI automatically done for it. So yeah, basically when the announcement was already made, we got 150 volunteers, and I was like, we need this in like 4 hours. So this is the only tool I could get it done. Once it's all done, so all of this, and then again, because it's just objects, it's extensible, so I put in all the common fields. And if I need an MP, I just say, okay, MP implements I representative, interface representative, it gets all the fields of representative, and then I just tack on the common ones. If I need to make a state representative, all I have to do is like class. Okay, let's just say it's a candidate, right? So NP candidate implements INP. And now I've got a new content type for, so now somebody can add, and now I've got a content type called candidate, which has exactly the same fields of NP. So I can even put in some custom fields in there, like running on own ticket or notes, and that's all. So state NP again, just add. And the cool thing about this is that because it's just an interface, if I remove a field, it doesn't break the app. If you define a class and you have methods and attributes, if you remove the class, the whole thing just falls apart. You get errors, field not found, key error, and so on. But using dexterity, all I'm doing is basically exposing that this interface implements this schema. If the interface goes away, then the object just goes back to its root and says it doesn't implement anything, and everything still keeps working. So this is really good when you have live prototyping, because the users might change the fields, and I can add and drop the fields, and everything still keeps working without breaking the entire thing. I don't have, so there's no unit tests or whatever in this in 4 hours. So it's a really interesting way of doing it. I don't know if there's something similar to that in like Java, or basically instead of class fields and methods, you have your form as an interface. Your schema is actually just an interface of fields, so it's not a real and then you abstract that on the back end to a real method. So the best way I could describe this was Ang Chin Han. He was working in PostgreSQL. He used to say that the best way to describe this is in RDBMS terms, is that in RDBMS you have your tables and your schema and so on. And if something is missing, your schema is broken. So he's saying that this is like implementing one field that's called JSON, and JSON is just a bunch of JSON definitions that can go away at any time. Is it fast? Probably not, but you can just play around and change all those JSON fields without breaking your entire schema. So I think that's a really good analogy of what I'm doing here. Okay, so and then um, what we have is each one of these, because it's just a component. I love Bootstrap.
Yeah, me too. It's really, really adaptive.
Like, I mean, you have 4 hours. You want something with mobile interface and drop-down menus and so on. Just put out Bootstrap.
Yeah.
It's the same default now.
And again, the advantage of it not being in a class and just interfaces is that, well, you can do it through the web as well now. So if I need to, I can just implement the fields here. For each one, I can even add a new concept and build a new one, because they're just a bunch of interfaces. And if I need to extend it with something fancy like geolocation, all I have to do is this interface for location implements Google Maps, for example, and then I'll have a Google Maps implementation on it. So the users can actually build their fields first, and then I export it to Python, and then I can extend it with whatever fields I want. And if I don't like how somebody extended, I can implement another interface to it and say Bing Maps, if there's anybody who actually uses that, but you can do that. or open maps.
OpenStream.
And oh yeah, yeah, OpenStream. And then all you've got now is that suddenly you've got another, your content type now can play Google and it can do OpenStreetMap. Um, so okay, and then the interesting thing from here is that you can then apply what we call behaviors, which is another interface implementation. And this is where I put in everything else. So I can extend my schema with more interesting behavior like geolocation and maps. So behaviors work for the entire schema. And not you can either extend a field or you can extend how all the fields behave. So here's I've got some example ones where if I want tagging, I just assign a behavior called categorization. Now immediately it's got tagging with all the complete features. If I need voting 2 thumbs, I add that in, immediately has it. If I take this out, all this, it just comes out without breaking anything. So I just plug in and plug out. So I did this in 4 hours. So I tell the users like, don't worry, just put in Sungai Pulau. I'll probably have something later on that has a behavior that says convert string to Google locations, and then that text they have before stays in there and is automatically adapted without them worrying about it, or without whether I can implement it or not. Related items, versioning. So if I need it versioning now, all I have to do is just do that, assign it to schema, it works. I've got immediate versioning. I don't have to rewrite versioning, which is really hard actually to do correctly. Okay, so that's dexterity. If you want, it's currently working on clone, but it's really lightweight. So the same idea, I think you can actually implement it in Django.
Not directly.
Yeah. Again, Han gave a perfect example.
Yeah.
Instead of a schema and an RDNS, now have your content fields as JSON fields that you can just muck around without actually having a proper schema. And then maybe when it's more stable later, you migrate some of those JSON fields into the database table and have it fully indexed and so on. So it's a good way to just prototype it quickly without breaking things. Okay, pandas. So I've got totally sidetracked by this, but it had to be done. Because we really don't know when the elections are going up, so I had to do it. So this is dexterity. If you want to learn more about it, just Google clone dexterity. And I and then you'll see some of how they designed it in the documentation of it. So if you have ideas of implementing it, let's say on your own CMS or Django, it's actually worth learning how they actually thought about it and implementing it. It's from a lot of mistakes that was done in clone before.
So, but when you say, I mean,
Yeah.
basically, this is more like a prototype stage. So once something has been solidified, you would actually move certain part of it, let's say for
I would
performance
just
reasons.
implement better behaviors.
Okay.
So for example, right now those fields are full text index, but they're not indexed by value, for example. So now, or let's say the location does not have a max. Then to solidify to make it stronger, I start implementing a max behavior for the location. If, for example, what is it? The P123, whatever the parliamentary codes are not indexed right now, so you can have a nice listing or drop down. I can implement a behavior that says convert to a vocabulary. So then somebody can reuse it for autocomplete.
When you say implement a behavior, can you write your own behavior?
Yes. You write your own behavior for that specific field, and then you just assign it to that field. So we can try lots of different ways and then take it in without breaking the system. Like I mentioned, most likely the next one is probably a behavior is for me to fix the location codes, the P23. I'll implement a behavior that matches it against a proper table, and then it will index it in a proper code plus area. Right now they're putting in everything. Some put it in commas, some put it in colons. But as long as they put in P123, I just do a regular expression match on a list. I can now implement a behavior that in terms of solidifying it, the data is horrible, but the index is going to be clean because I have a proper clean indexer that's going to store P123 and maybe the real name.
But
based
the
on
original data is
yeah.
still there in its
Yeah,
horrible form.
it's unperformed, but I've now implement match code to proper table. And if match, put it in an index, okay, with the real queen value and not the ref value. If somebody has a better implementation later, you just write an implement and pick it up. So it's pretty flexible without breaking. So this is actually a life cycle. So if I take any of these off, it doesn't break. And I had that problem before. Remember this, one of the fields disappeared. And it just kept on going. The CMS features I'm not going to go through. I just thought it was a really interesting concept. Another way of doing this, what's the other way of doing this? The other way of doing something like this is something like semantic web, where you implement like a markdown field, and you tell people just mark up these specific things. You know how you have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3?
Hmm.
Another good way of doing this is that you just have a wiki, plain text, but you assign specific CSS tags to it. So
Like diff and
country, tag it as country, and just as another style. And this way they can just do it in a rough way, and you can extract it out in a structured way later. So that was another idea we thought about as well, that could be done. So no template, free text, CSS stylings. Later on we can scrape it, regardless of how they format. So that's another idea.
This has got nothing to do with the one we'll be going to Cyberjaya, I think, right?
Different planet? Okay.
oh.
Anybody here familiar with R? Okay,
Only me?
yeah, there's like 3 or 4. Okay. Canvas is basically something like a Python implementation of R. So if you're familiar with R, actually a lot of the examples have R examples in Pandas. The main difference is that because it's in Python, for some people like me, it's a lot easier to work with. If you're familiar with scientific Python, you're also working with IPython, which also which also works with Matplotlib for all the graphing features. So if you're familiar with scientific Python, easily. So instead of trying to code, read CSV things, it will try to do a best guess for you automatically. So let's just say projects. So there's a read CSV function. There's a buffer read table, read from clipboard, and so on.
Clipboard, that's awesome.
Then it's got automatic completion by reading the directory. So there's
Yeah.
360,000
That's true.
projects.
That's true. That's true.
Now, is it CSV? Loading 300,000 in OpenOffice is freaking slow.
How big is that file?
This is 360,000 records.
That is the full.
Yeah.
Half
So,
megabytes.
but
I
this is
deal with
not
10 million.
joined to the directors list and
Okay.
not joined to, there was another
Just the
contractors.
project.
Yeah, so that was at 2 or 3. So this is just a raw project. So you can see 360,000 in 1 second. I tried this in OpenOffice. It loads just, even on a quad core with like 8 gigs of RAM, it was just every time you made a mistake in resizing the column, you just okay, copy, come back again. So um, so here you've got projects. It's a data frame, so 345,000 of this. And the whole thing with Pandas is it's assigned, it's assuming that it's a large set of data. So for example, if I just type I print this, for example, projects.
Hmm.
Projects company, and this is going to be 360,000. It's smart enough to think, okay, cool, 14, skip it, goes through the end. So you're not going to loop through 360,000 projects. Again, for example, you want to drop the null, it already has
Hmm.
options to, for example, drop null. If you need to. So this is without all the nulls removed. So all these things, it does it. It already assumes the most common set of features. So it was really quick to work with without figuring out. So I don't need to learn how to write CSV in Python. Python. It's already done that for you. Directories, for example. Um, directors.csv was actually in a tab delimited format. So read CSV, separator, slash T, tab.
Founding first row.
In the founding rows, yeah. Directors. And this tab's got other completion as well. Separator is slash T. Yeah. Really, really fast. So an example of just how fast it is, 360,000 projects. We want to see the average value of construction projects in Malaysia. Immediately. So it's if you you could do this on a spreadsheet, but it's pretty slow. Same thing with the joins. Just for the heck of it, I'm going to try that because I'm going to kill my home server. For example, if you just do a dumb join, right, where you just join all the directors to all the projects, and then you pivot 360,000 rows. Um, Basically, I tried it on a spreadsheet, it just died. On Pandas, it still does it, even though it's a really stupid behavior. To pivot table and normalize table, it went to 4 gigs, but it still did it. But it has lots of these functions where you can do it on an iterative basis. So it's got a function like group by. So instead of just like in R, where you don't work on like a billion data points in one go, you say group by, and it's just you can say first 10, first 20, first 100, first 50, and it will just loop through it really, really fast. And not sure if it's going to work. So yeah, so now you know that the average Mini projects in Malaysia is 350, what?
So it will here.
3.5 million, right?
3.5.
1.6.
And let's just see in interesting stuff like projects.
So this only works with CSV files, right?
No, it can be an RDBMS.
Can be, what about SQLite?
Pardon?
What about SQ3 files?
It's just like R,
Okay.
depending on what you have to import. As long as it's a tape, like it's got tables there. So as long as in a table-like format, there's lists, R. It's generally for people with really big data sets, it's an RDBMS file.
12 million or 12 billion?
There's 12.
That's 12 million.
So
12.4
okay,
gig.
what Harry means is that okay, databases might be simple, but what you want is there's a type tables, so you can
124
Yeah.
so you can import it to type tables.
billion.
For one project?
Can you now join them with
Is that
the
real?
patterns?
100 million.
I can tell you already if you're that it's Gamuda MMC. Already done the joins.
What project was that?
The ones that are more fun, which I've done it in SQL. I couldn't quite get it to work in Pandas. Is my TEDx, which is to search for anomalies. So for example, for each project, for each company, they have multiple projects, which is the when you join it together. So what I've found is that we search for specific anomalies like projects, companies with less than 5 projects, which means you don't have much of a track record, but with values over 100 million. And I got 267 out of those. And basically, 3 out of 4 were valid joint venture stuff. You know, you have a company that you just set up for a specific setup. But the other 25% were parachute contracts for people who just got retired, hits of pretty much every political company, with just 1 or 2. But it was still too manual. We still need to match against full text indexing of the names and relations, which is why the MyMP comes in. The MyMP, they're all trying to find all the names of the adult children, wives, and so on. Because and then the other negative thing, does anybody here from Google or people working with languages? The problem that we have in Malaysia is that we don't have a good corpus of names. So I couldn't detect, for example, in Malaysia, there was no running function to detect if somebody was male or female, or to match the root words. So let's just say it's Ghazali bin Ahmad, Ahmad bin Ghazali. both will match, but they're two different people. So that's a big, so that's really dangerous in the sense that you can't come with any conclusive. It's like 50-50, which is really bad.
You can specify order if it's something like Sphinx.
Yeah, you can specify order, but I don't know, it was hard.
You need to write
Are you
some
guys
function.
using like a full text search engine?
We were trying different ways of getting the corpus out. So Solar, Sphinx, but the root name, sometimes they have the bin, sometimes they don't. Sometimes Ahmad Ghazali bin something is two names in one. So it's like Ahmad Ghazali bin somebody, and then it's Ahmad bin Ghazali, Ghazali bin Ahmad. So in order, and then Ghazali Ahmad can also be another combination. So it's just it's really hard with Malaysian names. Then you've also got Chinese name and you've got Indian names. So it's all mixed up in there, and then you have misspellings as well. So English names, there was lots of functions and research done on variations of, let's say, Jake, Jacob, Jake, whatever. There's like root words in English. People have done a lot of research for it, but not for Malaysian names. So one of the and other anomalies, just by eyeballing it, is that you have women are amazing in the construction industry. There's like a couple of the ones that I pulled out from the data was all women companies or majority owned women with like 150 million ringgit construction projects. So either women are like in construction industry kings in Malaysia or it's somebody's wife's name. But we didn't have a corpus to automatically detect whether it was male or female. So you actually have to click on, and there's 360,000 of them. But you can do fun stuff like pick ones where the value are like 99999. So so that is an anomaly. When you bid for a project, you don't suddenly get 99999 or 99999 or exact figures. Those are all anomalies as well. Pandas is one way to do it. If you like to play with data, we have the data on the CNAP project as normalized CSV. It's already cleaned up by Swimek and Hai. Oops. I should have mentioned the
Lot
name.
Hodor.
Yeah, Hodor. And basically, you can work it with whatever tools you like are. Import it to your favorite database, or not recommended. Import it to your spreadsheet. So
Excel is dangerous in
yeah.
this.
So that's about it. And then the other part, I don't think I worked because I don't have exporting. Um, is that I'll just show it on the screen instead. Is that it's the same interface as Matplotlib. Um, so I don't have it this time.
But even that, Matplotlib doesn't really work well with SSH. I mean, you can export it.
Yeah, I actually have it working. Just not over DG. DG gets, this is about as fast as you can get for DG. I don't think they've upgraded this area, but I envy the other guys with 3 megabits. So Matplot uses the same Python. So now it's also using IPython. So if you import this library and you have those, you can now export it to Matplotlib while you're in the same interactive environment and start visualizing it automatically as well. So so I don't have exporting because it just uses TK and GR. But well, you've got all these now. So in one single environment, you can import SciPy and NumPy as well to if you want to work with those. So you've got one single interactive environment to work with data. I'm not in this field, so you can see I'm just fumbling around. But it's really cool tools in Python, and it's the same kind of tools that they use on abstract, especially SciPy. Okay, that's it. Right.
Alright. Okay, folks. Bad news. Jeremy had some issue. Most probably cannot make it. So we have only to talk today. Sad because I really want to hold the catch up soon. So it's still early. The DevTalk meetup is like 30 minutes later, 3 p.m. So I suggest that you hang around, mingle with us. Well, nobody stopped you from leaving. That's quite cool. So join us. All right. Another thing, Python Malaysia meetup. I try to have meetup every 1 month. I tried to alternate between here or Mind Valley. Both have now been back, so let's see how it goes.
That's the requirement.
So, okay, seriously, we try to have it once a month with different speaker. All is free to join. Watch our announcement, our no slides. Okay, our group, you can find us on Facebook, Python Malaysia user group. This is our Facebook page. And just Google for Python.my. That is our main page. We try to update as often as possible. So that's all for today. Feel free to mingle around. If you've got a question, you can talk to our speaker around. And thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, I'm moving from So how's it going to see one? Okay.
In various places in Asia, in Malaysia, Singapore, and so on. We've got an IT team of around 50 people. I did actually have some notes here, which I was going to refer to, but I'm new with OpenOffice, so I've no idea how to get it to actually show in the notes, so I'm going to go off my head. So basically about 50 people in IT, mostly based in KL, although we do have some elsewhere. When I joined about 2 years ago, we were pretty much 100% .NET and Microsoft Stack. We've changed a bit since then. I'd say we're probably 70% .NET now, and a lot of our server infrastructure is moving over to Linux. So our ops guys have had a bit of a task of learning from being Windows guys to
The reason for the shift being
the reason for the shift being well,
licensing?
a little bit, but it's only really that's really the smallest consideration. I mean, when you come to budgeting, a Windows license is pretty small in terms of the money. Of course, it hurts every time you have to shell out for a new license every time you want to build an instance. But part of it, I guess, is just I'm more familiar with the tools personally. I come from a lab stack background, and I think there's a lot more kind of tools which are available, things like HA proxy or Solar, those kinds of things which we're starting to use, just to live a lot happier in that environment. As you can see, we're kind of investigating a few other things like MongoDB and a bunch of guys who get together and do knowledge sharing and so on. They do look a bit sad. Well, the other ones, they were all kind of devouring food, so I thought so back when I joined, we had a pretty manual process for deployment, and in most cases we still do. And what we really wanted to achieve was a lot more automation. So I'm sure the word Etsy gets mentioned an awful lot in any of these kind of meetups. I guess they are the poster child for all this kind of stuff. Developers of Etsy, day one, they're deploying code, and everybody deploys code. So push button deployment being that real goal of where we want to get to. Of course, in an environment where you've got 50 developers or 50 IT people, where you've got 4 or 5 different code bases or major code bases, where you've got some of those code bases being pretty old. So IPT Malaysia started in about 7 or 8 years ago, and at that point, they were actually using classic ASP, classic. I like the terms there, and then moved to .NET. But you've got a very old code base which has never really been built with tests in mind. So how do you go from that kind of environment to starting to do continuous deployment, continuous integration? Because this is the dream, of course, is a big button that everyone pushes and you get code live. This is really more the reality. You've got a very fragile situation. As soon as you change something in one place, you're going to mess up something else. And this is very much what we face on a day-to-day basis. So when I joined, I think we had one server for each of the applications. And that's fine when people copy up code. You know, they copy up and place it in one server, and yeah, it's not ideal, but at least it works. Then you add another server, and they start going, oh, code here, code there. That's interesting. Oh, I forgot to copy it over there. Oh, I put that version over there. What did you do with that one? Oh, right, okay, we're not all
Been there.
Yeah, been there, done that.
So that's all well and good. Yeah, okay. So we can deal with 2. You know, it just takes a bit of training. Like, how about 3 or 4 or 5? Yeah, it doesn't work. And we're also making a lot of moves now towards AWS. So previously, a lot of our stuff has been hosted over at AIMS in KL, virtual machines, but fairly standard and fairly traditional. A lot of our stuff is now moving to AWS, and as you may well know, AWS, you have to assume that your instances aren't going to be there. So you have to be able to build these instances very quickly. And if you've got developers manually copying up code, you're going to have a bad time. So that's really kind of where we're at, and we said, okay, so how do we move forward from being in this situation where we have House of Cards and get towards that dream scenario where everything is automated and roses grow and pixies fly and everything's
Unicorns.
wonderful. This road is not long enough. It's actually a lot longer than that. But it is a very long journey. So what I wanted to talk about today really was how we're on that journey. And we're very much at the beginning of the journey right now. And for a bit of context, we have 5 main sites that we operate. And each of those sites, as of today, are running on different code bases. So 3 of them are on .NET, 2 of them are on PHP, but even among the 3 .NET ones, they're all actually different applications. They may be doing very similar things, but they're different, and there's different teams working on them. So doing this kind of thing is tricky because you have to engage an awful lot of teams in doing it. So what we've done is we've said, let's start with a small, contained prototype. And the prototype we've chosen is a site, it's called commercialasia.com. It deals with commercial real estate, offices, retail, that kind of stuff. The reason we picked it, a number of them, one, it's small. So the site's been around for about 9 months, so it's a fairly small code base. The team is also pretty small, being just 4 people. It's also running on Linux, and that just makes it a hell of a lot easier once you start getting into scripting and a lot of these tools, you know, things like Puppet, for example, apparently it works on Windows, but you're really going on an edge case as soon as you get towards that. So we picked that one as our test case. And we got the help of a company called ThoughtWorks. So if you're not familiar with ThoughtWorks, they're a large consultancy company specialized in agile, continuous delivery, user experience, and they've just opened in Singapore in the last 6 to 9 months. So we got them up to help us for a couple of weeks and to provide some technical leadership to the team on how do we go about getting from manual deployment to automated deployment, and that being kind of our initial step. And we have learnt an awful lot just in those couple of weeks on what we thought was a pretty simple project. We thought, you know, it's a very small site, it's a new code base, how hard can it be? We actually found that as soon as you've let developers run loose in an environment without any proper planning, it can become pretty messy. So we were running off one AWS EC2 instance. Requirements come up. Okay, we need to save PDF documents. Great, okay, where do we save PDF documents to? Oh, look, there's a disk there. Let's save to the local disk. Okay, good. One instance, one disk, that's fine. Now, how about 2 instances? Where's that data going to go? Who's going to, you know, where's it going to be stored? So we found that user-generated content was by default being saved on a local disk. So there were uploaded files, there were PHP sessions, there were all sorts of things, which meant that breaking out of that, we had to do a fair bit of work actually extricating it and putting it onto S3 and making it something which those instances could share. So that was one big learning we had, was that even just on a fairly simple site with a fairly simple infrastructure, in a short time things can get out of control, and you really need from day one to be a lot more controlled on these things. So once we'd done that and sorted out our architecture, got a test environment up, we then started to look at the actual deployment process. So the first thing we did was move from Subversion to Git, and that was done primarily because we wanted to do a lot more branching and merging of code, and Git is a lot friendlier to that work process. The team also had previous experience with Git and wanted to move to it. So we moved to Git. And then we decided to use Jenkins for our deployment process. So Jenkins CI server, and we actually have two different builds which we do on Jenkins now. We have one which actually builds the code, so that's pulling every 5 minutes from Git and getting the latest changes and doing a build, running some tests, and it's then tarring that up and dumping it there as an artifact. Then we have another Jenkins build which is manually triggered at the moment, and that's the one which actually does the deployment. So that Jenkins build, essentially you feed it a build number and it will go off, get the latest tarball, and send it off to we have a single deployment host. And that deployment host is the center which then knows about all the other web servers and application servers which need to have that code. And the reason we did that was just to separate out those concerns. So the deployment host is the only one which needs to know about which web servers are currently in the loop. So we're just moving over to this process with the team. It's been I think interesting because a lot of the guys have not had any experience of doing any of this at all, and what we've done is in the spirit of DevOps, we've got one of our systems engineers as part of that group also doing it. So a guy called Ali, who used to be a developer, actually, he used to write PHP code, is now working in our systems engineering team, doing a lot of work with Puppet and a lot of the automation stuff. So he was working very closely with the team on that. So we had developers and operations guys working together to try and get this stuff out. So it's been challenging because not many people have had experience with it. Even source control to some of the team was a bit of a novelty. So the kind of the delight on some people's faces when they realised they didn't have to manually merge in changes and figure out which versions of things were where was pretty nice to see. And you know, something like Git it does have a large learning curve, but I think it's one of those things where once you work at it and you start to see the benefits, people will get on board with it. So I think, you know, within this contained project, we've had quite a lot of success, and we're very pleased with how it's going. The challenge for us now is to move from small contained projects to much larger deployments. So the largest of our sites, say Up Property Malaysia, which has a whole load of components to it, is going to be a lot more challenging for this. But we're going to take a similar approach where we iterate over small pieces. So get one application out at a time, and don't try and do it all at once, because I think that's really the way to failure. And take it as small successes and celebrate those successes as they come. But the rest of the teams are kind of eagerly watching what this team is doing and what they've achieved. So all in all, I think, you know, I'm fairly positive that we can do this, but it is a fairly long road. I think the other thing, when I'm talking about it from a perspective of a large organisation, one of the hardest things to do is to get support for this. It's very invisible. Um, if you're working in a Scrum team or in a traditional team, if you're talking with whoever it is who controls the purse strings and you're saying we want to spend 2 or 3 weeks doing deployment, the question will be, well, what? Why? What do we get out of it? And my job as a CIO, I guess, is very much around risk. So I report to the CEO, to the board of directors, and so I talk to them all about risk to the business. And IT, of course, in an online business is a big source of risk. So for me, deployment and continuous integration is really a great way of de-risking what we do. Because there's all sorts of risks involved in untested changes going up in terms of people putting the wrong files here or the wrong files there, forgetting to put it here, of
I kind of wonder how that would look like.
But that's the kind of the big next challenge for us, and that was kind of part of the fun of doing it with the Linux thing was okay, it's easy, you SSH it here and it's fine. At this point, we're thinking that we can actually use a fairly similar structure to a point. You're still running Jenkins, running a deployment host which gathers all the code up, and then actually pushing it out is probably going to be FTP maybe, or I believe there are ways of running SSH on a Windows box also, which could be interesting. The other thing we could look at, I kind of briefly mentioned about Puppet on Windows. That's something which we've kind of got on our roadmap, but it could also be a way of doing it. Could be optimizing it and getting Puppet to pull it in and deploy it.
Okay, I think that you want to stay away from using Puppet as a deployment tool. I've seen people who have tried it, and it's very prone to error. Puppet is a tool that is meant to keep your servers configured to what you want them to look like, and so you use it for the moving parts is usually not a very good idea. I've spoken to some guys who do Chef, and in Chef is cool because it's very flexible, and it's very dangerous because it's very flexible. It's kind of like PHP. You can do a lot of stuff, but it doesn't mean that you should do all these things that you can do. And I spoke to some guys that they were doing Chef. They were using Chef, and they did deployment. They had the deployment somehow. Historically, they had the deployment sneaked into their Chef recipes, and the problem was that now, because of the way it was set up, every time they wanted to deploy, their whole website needed to come down for 6 minutes just because the Chef recipes needed to run. And it was just because Chef allows you to do these kind of things. And it depends on your scenario, obviously, but to me, a configuration management tool should do what it is made for, and that's configuration management, and not deployment. I think that you can use I don't know actually for Microsoft what to use. I don't know if you can use Capistrano to do Windows deployments.
You might be able to. I mean, I think most of the Capistrano deployments tend to still use SSH to move stuff around.
You can always
you
do
might need to kind of lift and replace that with. I will say, I mean, you might be able to see files over SSH with Windows.
You can always go Facebook style and do a BitTorrent.
Well, that might be an overkill.
Well, at least it works.
But one way people that I know of deploy on Windows automatically is like push on SVN or something. That one way to do that. Not sure it's a good idea, but I know people.
Right.
Well, the other thing we at the moment we don't actually there's an ASP.NET application. Most of the time we don't actually push build code. So you push up the ASP files and the VB files and the C files, C# files, and it starts compiling on demand, which isn't great, but it works. It does mean that once a server has been deployed to it, it sits there at 100% CPU for a couple of minutes, which is always fun. So doing something like this would actually give us the chance to push out built artifacts as well, which would help a lot of that. Because you also run a risk, if you're just copying up source files, that whatever environmental changes mean that you get a compile time error as well, which can be pretty nasty.
I thought Windows .NET deployment was just the DLLs and the executables, right?
Yeah, well, with ASP.NET, you can also just push up the code behind files and it will compile it on the fly.
No, I mean, because from what I understand, you usually just deploy the DLLs and the executables.
Yeah, I think that would be a better way to do it.
Because I know a lot of people just do that instead.
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely kind of the next step is figure out, now we've got a process which works, changing the tools so that it works on Windows.
So are you all green on your Jenkins?
We are. Yeah. The light at the beginning, which was nicely coloured green, actually was green in the source photo as well. I didn't just do it. No, yeah, we are green on Jenkins, and the tests are still limited.
That's something you build up over time.
Yeah, and our approach for testing has been take those very central flows and do the functional testing first. So just get the real kind of smoke test things out. Does the homepage show? Do you get a search result back? Those kind of very basic things, and then start to build a regression library around that.
I think it's the right approach if you have such a large code base.
That's
right. 5 code bases. You cannot just say, "Oh, let's take 3 months off and write tests."
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where I think a lot of the product guys hate me because I'm slowing stuff down because I'm insisting that we write tests in various places, but
yeah, you wait a year and they'll thank you for
exactly.
So how long do you keep deployment?
Sorry?
How long do you keep deployments of machines?
At the moment, we're doing about 2 or 3 deployments a week.
Okay.
We're aiming to get kind of more often than that. But yeah, at the moment it's kind of 2 or 3.
But without the proper test, doesn't things breaks?
Sorry?
Without proper test, without full-blown test, I mean more proper test, doesn't things just would break more easily due to?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely the kind of big risk at the moment.
Okay.
So yeah, testing and adding those tests is kind of the priority for the team.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions?
So,
Quick question, more like culture. Did you find any resistance in the teams working moving from Windows to Linux environment? Or
Interesting. It's kind of been by stealth. So no, not really. There was definitely a lot of fear when I joined the company. So they knew that I came from a background of. So my background as a developer was doing Perl and then Ruby. I actually did start out doing classic ASP about 12 years ago. So, but very quickly moved into dynamic languages. So they knew that when I joined, and I guess there might have been a bit of suspicion that I was just going to come in and say, right, all this .NET's going out the window and we're going to do something else. But realistically, that's just not possible. As much as I might have wanted it, with the amount of the size of the applications, the size of the teams, the amount we had to do, just take a pragmatic approach. So what we've done, I guess, is over time, as we've developed new stuff, is introduce new technologies. So when we wanted to move from using SQL queries for doing searching to using a search engine, we picked Apache Solr as the base for that, rather than we could have gone with the Microsoft, well, whatever they call it these days, what used to be fast search anyway, which Microsoft bought out. So we could have done that, but we decided to go Solr. When we wanted to do load balancing again, we could have used some of the Windows server enterprise kind of version features for that, but we decided to go HT proxy. So a lot of the kind of the move in the infrastructure has been over time and somewhat by stealth. And the infrastructure guys have been, I think they've really enjoyed it. They've learned an
It's a good opportunity.
it's been a fantastic opportunity, and a few of them have done the Puppet training, and some of them have gone off down to do some stuff with AWS, and they're picking up